What is up, guys? Rick Hackus here, and today we are taking a no BS, hype-free look at the Rise of Iron, Destiny's next expansion, and really analyzing what exactly it's offering and if it looks like it will make a positive and worthwhile addition to Destiny. Now, why is it important to do this? Well, simply put, most of Destiny's expansions were led up to with a lot of hype and followed by a lot of disappointment. Modern gaming seems to be more about building up hype than it is about delivering results, and therefore it's important to cut through the hype and really look at what is being offered and if those things being offered are going to improve the game in the long run. Now, first things first, the price. Now, before we talk about the fact that the Rise of Iron is $30 and whether or not it looks like it will be worth $30, we first have to talk about the fact that it even has a price. I've seen a lot of people comment and say, is the Rise of Iron going to be free? And when they find out it's not, they're often disappointed because Bungie did release a statement saying that there won't be any more paid expansions, that they're going to a free DLC model that is funded by microtransactions. Now, when Bungie did announce a large expansion coming in the fall of 2016, I did expect it to be paid, but you can understand why some people didn't expect this. Bungie never went out of their way to say it's a large paid expansion. One more word really could have cleared up this confusion, and Bungie has gotten in trouble in the past from the community multiple times for not communicating well with the community. I mean, for goodness sakes, very recently they introduced skill-based matchmaking, didn't tell anyone about it, and in fact when people asked about it, they outright lied to the community before eventually, when multiplayer was nigh unplayable, they had to take it out. So stuff like that happens, and you can understand that Bungie is maybe not the greatest at communicating with the community. But the interesting thing about this whole price debacle is the fact that, before the April update, I think that people were really wanting another paid expansion. I remember, Reddit posts and people often saying, please go back to a paid expansion model, we want a full expansion. But after the April update, that probably changed because, I know it changed in my mind, because, before the April update, the live DLCs just weren't very substantial. Crimson Days was a joke. I made a video saying Crimson Days is a joke, and I got a lot of flack from that from people saying, well, I had fun in Crimson Days. Well, so did I. The Crimson Doubles playlist was actually really fun. It was really enjoyable. But it wasn't a substantial offering. It wasn't a substantial DLC at all. A couple of shaders and some ghost shells is really nothing. And what really proves my point on that is the April update. The April update was also free and offered so much more. I am back playing Destiny a lot more often because of the April update. It was a fantastic DLC, updating the Prison of Elders and then adding a bunch of new weapons, bringing back the old school weapons in the Vanguard and Crucible packs. That was all great, added so much content. And the April update was so good that now people are thinking, well, maybe we don't need a paid expansion, right? Like, the desire for another paid expansion isn't there anymore because the April update was so good, and it showed us the pinnacle of what a free DLC could and should be. If there was another update like the April update, and then maybe one or two more before Destiny 2 came out, we might not even need a paid expansion. But this paid expansion was in development from before the April update, when people had nothing to do but Crimson Days and Sparrow Racing, and they were really wanting more content. They were really wanting a paid expansion. So a little bit mess up in the timing there, and actually kind of, a dose of irony that the April update was so good and it showed us what free DLCs could be, that people aren't really clawing for a paid DLC anymore. But that's irregardless. The Rise of Iron is $30 and that's not going to change. So let's look at what it's offering and if it's worth that $30. Now, starting us off, we have a new story campaign and quests. Now, this is a pretty good thing. I'm always interested to learn more about the Destiny universe. I find it very interesting. It just hasn't been told very well. And the Taken King's storyline, especially when you have memorable characters like Kaid 6, was actually pretty enjoyable. And you actually kind of learn some interesting things about the Hive, about the Destiny universe. So that was all good fun. The problem here with the new story campaign is that how many times did you play the story in the Taken King expansion? one time, maybe two, like you didn't really get a lot of replayability out of the story campaign missions. Now, there was daily missions, and at the very beginning of the Taken King, you know, everyone was doing a lot of daily missions because they rewarded you with the legendary marks that you needed to buy stuff, but a little bit of time passed, and once you started getting legendaries more often, that just became inconsequential. I haven't done a daily story mission in months, like months and months and months. So all of that new content added through the story just really didn't have a lot of replayability. That stuff has not come up. I have not played any of that content from the Taken King in a very, very long time. Now, some of you watching may be different. Maybe you replay the campaign every week. I don't know. But I think that it's safe to say that as Destiny is right now, the story missions need to have a little bit more reason for replayability. You know, Bungie has often done this, where they introduce a great piece of content and then they make it irrelevant. You know, the Vault of Glass and Crota's End are prime examples. You have all of this content in Destiny, but you have no reason to play it. Therefore, I am excited, and I do think that it's a good thing that they're adding a new campaign and quest. I'm interested to learn more, again, about the Destiny universe, but I hope they do something this time. Just maybe in terms of better rewards for the dailies, or just something that gives you a reason to go back and replay those story missions every once in a while, really to add some oomph to this content. Next, we have new armor, new gear, and new weapons. Now, this all is kind of in one category, and it's really going to be in one place whether they succeed with this category or whether they fail. And it really needs to be diversified. If you're adding new armor, if you're adding new weapons, it doesn't matter which. If you add new armor that's exactly the same as the old armor, it isn't going to be very special, is it? And luckily with the Taken King, they added a bunch of new perks, and so that really kind of spiced up armor a little bit. But again, they've got to do that same thing with the Rise of Iron. They need to have new perks, perhaps new perk layout, perhaps introduce foundries into armor, so you can really have some diversification within armor, but they need to give people more diversity than what they had before buying the Rise of Iron expansion. And it's especially important with weapons. I have been fighting this fight for so long. I constantly bring up that they need to break the damage archetypes. Now, for the few of you who don't know what I'm talking about, every single auto rifle in the game since the alpha to this point in Destiny has done 3 different rate of fire damage combinations. You have the slow shooting high damage auto rifles, you have the fast shooting low damage auto rifles, and then you have the ones in the middle. And they have never, ever breaking these damage archetypes. And the same thing is echoed in all of Destiny's different gun types. Go to a database, sort by damage, and it's pretty depressing. So it's hard to get excited about a new Trials of Osiris or a new special auto rifle because it does exactly the same damage as 7 other auto rifles you already have. And the exact same thing applies to perks. If they introduce new perks within the Rise of Iron, which I assume they're going to because they introduced a lot more with the Taken King, they need to make sure that they are worthwhile and that they can compete with the other current top tier perks in the game. You know, in the Taken King, they introduced a lot of just not very good perks, almost all not very good perks. You have stuff like Exhumed, which is totally useless and is never going to compete with something like Hidden Hand or Headseeker or Full Auto or any of the small handful of good perks that you're always looking for regardless of the gun. They need to really diversify the perks within Destiny with the new weapons being added in the Rise of Iron. So diversity is key. They need to introduce stuff that breaks the damage archetypes. They need to introduce some new perks that actually spices up what you're looking for on your rolls. And if they don't do that, that offering of new armor and new weapons, that is really just not going to be a very worthwhile addition to Destiny. Next, we have a new raid, and for this I'm a lot more optimistic because all of the raids I believe in Destiny have been very good pieces of content, have been very fun to play, and although you might have your preferences, for example, I definitely like the Vault of Glass more than I do King's Fall, I'm sure whatever raid they're going to add is going to be fun to play. They haven't messed up yet with their raid offerings. I do just hope that when they add the new raid, they don't make it the only thing that's going to give you the highest light gear, because with the April update, what that has shown is that when you have a bunch of diversity in what you can play within the game, it really helps the game out. You can do strikes, you can do the Challenge of Elders, you can do King's Fall, you can do a bunch of different things to get that max light gear, and that kind of takes away from the pressure on the raid. When the Taken King came out, it did have King's Fall as the only thing to get you the best light gear, pretty much, except for the PvP stuff. And so it really put a ton of pressure on King's Fall. People are playing it 3 times a week, every week for week after week after week, and then you just get bored of it a lot quicker. If you kind of alleviate some of that pressure and spread out the activities that you're able to do to reach max light, that can really improve the longevity of the new raid, because people don't feel forced to do it over and over and over and over again. Moving on, we have a substantial light increase. This is definitely a positive thing, just, upping the light level, giving people something to go for. Definitely worked with the April update. I really do hope that they keep the April update style of leveling, which is the constant progression style, rather than just pure randomization, which was in the Taken King. Moving on, we have a new strike. Now, it's very interesting that the Xbox Live Store actually has it listed as new strike, but in the actual official reveal, they said new and updated strikes. And I think that they're just kind of wording it differently to hide the fact that they do only have, I'm pretty sure, according to the official description on the Xbox Store, they only have one new strike in the Rise of Iron, and that is not very good, and it's really hard to justify this. Look at the Taken King. It had Shield Brothers, it had Darkblade, it had Fallen Saber, Echo Chamber, it had a bunch of different strikes, and it remade quite a bit of different strikes too. That really spiced up the strike playlist. That gave myself and a lot of other people, I'm sure, a lot of content to play again and again and again, and introducing the strike exclusive loot, which I assume they're going to do, I hope they do, with the Rise of Iron. That was another reason that kind of kept people playing those strikes. So only introducing one new strike and then updating, what, 1 or 2 more strikes? That is nothing close to what the Taken King offered. So that is definitely a downside of the Rise of Iron, is that they really aren't adding the same level of content in terms of strikes as the Taken King. Moving on, we have new Plaguelands, Zone, and Social Space. This is all pretty good. Now, a lot of people were kind of saying, oh, I wish we could have gone multiple places. We could have gone to the Plaguelands and Europa, or done whatever, but, the Taken King really only added one new big explorable area, which was the Dreadnought, so it kind of makes sense that they're adding just one more with the Plaguelands in the Rise of Iron. I don't necessarily have a problem with this. The Dreadnought was very well designed. There was a lot of stuff to do in the Dreadnought. I really do hope that there's kind of a Court of Oryx style of stuff to do in the Plaguelands, because the Court of Oryx was a great piece of content. It was kind of like something that you could just go and find while patrolling in the Dreadnought, and it offered something to do. A lot of people just would go back and play the Court of Oryx, and, very recently with the April update, making it so that the artifacts can drop 335, that's another reason to keep people playing that content. So I hope they do the Court of Oryx style of stuff in the Plaguelands. If they do, I have no problem with this. That is definitely a worthwhile addition. Not to mention all of the other stuff going on in the Dreadnought. You had the Skyburners codes, you had the Antiquated Ruins, you had the fragments that you were going around trying to find, you had all these chests. You had a lot of stuff going on in the Dreadnought. They really kind of stepped their game up for what you can expect in a playable patrol mode space within Destiny. So I hope they keep that level up with the Plaguelands. If they do, that's awesome. A new social space is very interesting. It's going to be a worthwhile addition if they add some new factions. Look at the last social space they added, which was the Reef. And the Reef is cool because you have some factions there. You have the Queen's bounties and the Queen's stuff. You have Varix doing the Prison of Elders stuff. You have a couple of different factions kind of held there, and you're able to earn exclusive rewards with them and level them up. As long as they do that sort of thing with this new social space, have a special Iron Banner NPC that gives you special rewards, even for doing, PvE stuff, hunting enemies in the Plaguelands, whatever it is, as long as they do that, that social space will definitely be a good addition. Next, we have new Crucible mode and maps. This is pretty standard for any DLC. I'm sure the Crucible people are really looking forward to new maps, and a new mode, well, it's gonna be you either like it or you don't like it, so it's hard to kind of assess that addition. But, you know, this is pretty standard stuff for a DLC. The last thing we have is the new enemy faction, which are kind of the mutated, technology-augmented Fallen, and we also have new bosses, which of course are going to be new, mutant Fallen bosses. Now this is just a great thing. We're going to have a new faction of enemies to fight, they're going to have new abilities, we're going to have to overcome those abilities with new gameplay challenges, with new ways of doing things. This is all good stuff, and when the Taken were added into Destiny with the Taken King, they did, although some of them are often very annoying, the Taken Scions, the stupid Taken phalanxes are blowing you off of cliffs and all that shit, but aside from that, they were definitely a positive addition to Destiny. Playing the Taken, when you're fighting the Taken, it feels very different than if you're fighting the Hive, if you're fighting the Fallen. So adding a new faction with the, augmented Fallen, as long as they have different abilities, which I'm sure they will, that is going to be an extremely positive addition to Destiny. So, is the Rise of Iron going to be a positive addition to Destiny? Well, we simply don't know because there's so many ifs. The story campaign and quests are going to be a great addition to Destiny if they actually give you an extra incentive to play them more than once. The new armor and weapons are going to be a positive addition to Destiny if they actually break the damage archetypes and introduce some new perks to armor and to weapons that actually can diversify those systems. That's really important. I mean, Destiny, above all things, is a loot-based game, and if they don't deliver on the loot aspect by introducing a bunch of weapons that are just reskins and armor that are just reskins as well, that is really going to make this DLC not as good. The new Plaguelands area is going to be awesome if they actually do the same sort of things they did with the Dreadnought in terms of content to find. And the only really downside of this DLC that I see is that they have a pretty limited number of strikes. Now, of course, that's kind of, you could argue, made up for by the fact that this is $10 less than the Taken King. But again, we can't really assess this DLC fully until we actually know more about the game. However, it's important to pay attention when they're releasing more information about the game. Pay attention to if they've answered any of these ifs, if they are diversifying the loot system, if they are making the Plaguelands have enough stuff to do as the Dreadnought, if they are making the story campaign more replayable. That's the things we should be looking out for. And if they haven't said anything about those ifs, if they haven't answered any of those questions by the time the Rise of Iron is launching, then it's probably not going to be worth it. Now that's it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed and appreciate a Destiny YouTuber that isn't caught up in the hype. If you do, a simple like or share really helps me out. Now if you enjoyed this content and want to see more Rise of Iron content, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can also follow. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.